Repel. Reject. Create.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome back to the Rebel, Reject, Create podcast, where we dive into it with people using creative thinking skills and creativity in their professional lives. And today I have with me Catherine Wilkes, who is a Shooper, which means she is on a mission to find more ways in life to let go and express yourself. SHOOP, her organization, is positive, upbeat, ambitious, out of your comfort zone experiences. So, Catherine, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, nice to be here.
Yeah, so I got to ask straight away, what is shooping and what does it mean to shoop?
Well, you gave a very good introduction because it is about positive, upbeat, out of your comfort zone experiences. But really, it's about allowing something that may have been squashed or contained in some way over the years to come out, the instinct that we have inside us, to let it play, really.
And why is that so important? What's going on in the world that you feel like that really needs to happen?
So I've worked for a long time within mental health services, and I would hear often, but it's one of the reasons we set up the Shooper in particular, was when one young person said to us, I just want to stop coping. I want to start living. But when they said it as clearly as that, I realized that that's kind of what I've been hearing for a very long time, that life becomes contained, organized. You get a lot of isolating coping strategies that you just learn to live with, that limit what you do in a day and how you do things in a day. And it becomes, I feel like you just get to you easily learn all these ways to hide who you are. And it becomes easier to stay away from life. And I think that if we can start to trust our instinct a little bit more, then we can build on that, and that will change how we feel and therefore what we go out and do.
Wow.
So yeah, life becomes a bit more it feels good, it feels better, it feels good.
Right. Wow. So, I mean, you're actually on a mission to change the world.
Yes, I should say it as boldly as that, shouldn't I?
Yes, you should.
Yeah.
So, what is your take on how this happens? I mean, what are the warning signs? What are the things we're exposed to that do this to us?
That do the containing?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think a lot of it comes down to our education system sometimes. I mean, I do a lot of work as well with a different organization in early years, and the conversation I was just having at the weekend, it can start with just telling children to stop running, to sit still, to be quiet, to not be wild, basically, to not do what they want to do when they need to do it, and to learn to behave in a particular way. So I think that, and I think that adults in children's and young people's lives also have this pressure to be seen to parent in a particular way, to be seen to teach in a particular way. So that adds everybody involved in sort of negotiating life feels like there's a right and a wrong way to do it. So all those things that we do instinctually as a child, like we'll figure out 50 different ways we could cross a road as a child, whereas an adult, there's only one way to cross a road. You know, it just disappears. And then as an adult, and this is a trap I've definitely fallen into, there's this way of being seen as being professional. And that's the word for me that definitely contained me. And I think that, setting up the Shooper now, I think some people are a little bit like, what? But I don't understand really what this word professional means now, and I'm starting to chip it away a little bit and figure out what makes us more human so that we can connect together in a better way.
So are you saying that the way we're socialized and programmed to behave is actually getting in our way of us being who we are, and therefore, I guess, who we could be.
Yeah, who we are, who we could be. And then when life gets really tough, we resort to a very safe way of being. So I think that self-protection is something we learn, and being on guard is something that we learn. And it comes in for all sorts of reasons, but when life gets tough, that it's just easier to go with that. I'll just protect myself, and I'll put up my barriers, and I'll shut myself away. Right. So that makes life harder. Like when life is tough, for whatever reason, I mean, there's so many things now that are contributing to people not feeling great in themselves, to do with finances, to do with social pressure, to do with just the fact that we don't have the resources to look after ourselves in the same way, you know. Yeah. To live in a warm house. All right. You know, there's so much stuff going on.
So now you're in the business of helping people detach themselves from those roles. But what I want to ask you is, how then did you do that for yourself? What happened to you where you suddenly went, hey, this is not cool. I don't like this.
Well, I met this guy called Pip, who I founded the Shooper with. Right. And we met through very different circumstances. I was the CEO of a mental health organization, and he was referred to the organization. And for various different reasons, you know, he was the same age as me, although he does like to remind me a little bit younger. But he spent the 5 years previous to us meeting locked away in his house. And my life was very different, but we just would talk a lot about how the paths we've taken are different, and what's led to that, those different ways of living life. And one of the things that we used to do in the organization was the main reason it existed was to listen to people's ideas and trying to make them a reality. And I think Pip spoke a lot there about how he felt seen and he knew that he was important, and that was what made a difference in his life. But equally, he did that for me. He made me feel seen, and he also taught me to that the way that the organization needed to work, it needed to be mutual. He needed to understand me and trust me, not it constantly be a them and us.
A one-up relationship.
A one-up relationship, which is how services are normally designed and set up. Yep. And for a number of different reasons, I left that organization, but we kept working together, and we found that we would play. We've had this way of bouncing off one another. My background is in dance, so I'm very physical. I like to play physically. We've both trained in improvisation during lockdown when we had to do things online, and he's very quick with his words. He knows how to play verbally. So together we awoke. I think when you've got somebody you can really bounce off and you've got backup, that it doesn't matter how weird it is what you do or how random it is what you do. Somebody just goes, yes, and then you move on to the next thing, and you move. It's very, very energizing. And suddenly you can be doing all sorts of things. And this has led to us doing all sorts of things that we never thought we could do. And that is actually the starting point for us. If we're working with a group, we want to get to this point where your heart beats, you let go, and you do something you didn't think you would do.
Yeah.
Because you can call upon that then lots of different times in lots of places in life.
Great. Hey, if you're listening to this conversation and you're enjoying what Catherine's got to say, please don't forget to hit the like button, or even better, hit the subscribe button, because there's plenty more of these conversations that have already happened and plenty more coming as well. I want to pick up on something you just said there, Catherine. Yes, and. Why is that such a powerful response to any suggestion or any idea from another human being?
Because we're so used to hearing no.
Yes, but.
Yeah, no, but or telling ourselves no. I think, you know, I have a little voice in my head that says no, and I have to work really hard to quieten those little voices. I think that other people tell us no, and I think society and expectations tell us no. And We're working with this a young person at the minute to develop her idea of this random festival, and it is wonderful just to hear her met with a yes and just to see where it goes. And I mean, and this is quite possibly the strangest event I'm now ever going to be part of, but it's really energizing, and she feels so like she matters in the world, like what she's got to say and what she's got to contribute really matters.
Yeah. Someone once said to me, if you say but, it means that everything you said before but is basically a lie,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's rule number one of improv, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I've not invented this yes and, it's a game that you can play, but actually it's a really good tool just to use it all the time to see what happens as a result of saying it.
What does happen as a result of saying it? I mean, obviously I understand that it goes places, but what does it do in your head? And like, what's the mechanism of this?
It says, for first point, I think it validates you. So somebody's listening.
Right.
And I think that not being listened to as well is just quite a annoying, frustrating thing in life. And so all of a sudden, if somebody meets you with yes, and tell me more about that, you're like, oh, people are interested in what I've got to say. You want to know more of what I've got to say. So it gives you confidence. It really gives you confidence to trust in what it is that you've got to offer.
Yeah, definitely. I think, for me, what's so important about and is that in a weird way, it allows you to suspend your own judgment of yourself, right? Because when you say and, you're immediately going further than where you were.
Yeah.
So in order to do that, you've got to let go of your idea of the limits of where you are, right?
Yes, exactly. And we put those limits on ourselves all the time. Yeah. And it's lovely just to be given the space to see where else you can take it.
Right. Okay. So the shoopery to shoop, what is the resistance that you get to this idea and to this terminology that you've come up with? How does the average conversation go?
Well, actually, once we've got to the conversation point, it's fine.
Fair enough.
I think that the resistance at the beginning is the fact that it's a new word and people have got to get their head around it, which we've done purposefully because we're a bit too set in our ways in the world that there is an answer to everybody's problems that will instantly fix things. And SHOOP is a word that's entirely versatile. It can mean anything to anybody. What your SHOOP is different to what my SHOOP is. And we love that once people have got the hang of that, they're just very used to using it as a verb now. I'm going to go and shoot. So that is great to see happen. But people have to get their head around it because we're so used to looking for outcome-based solutions. That's the resistance to it is, well, is it going to achieve this?
I measure it.
I measure it. And I don't know. And I can tell you the stories of things that happen when people shoot. Well, and other people do and go and do that. And the more we always say we're an experiential learning company. This isn't something you can really talk about. You have to do it. And anybody that has shooped just talks about it just from such a felt way, from an experience way, that it makes sense to them. So I think the resistance comes to the use of a word that nobody's heard and the fact that it's not easily defined. And that's good. That's good. I'm glad that it messes with your head in that way.
So your elevator pitch, as it were, then doesn't you probably don't have one, right? Because it's like, well, we're going to go shoot.
We're going to go shoot.
Does that solve? Well.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Right. But we're getting there with it. I think people really understand the fact that they don't want to cope anymore.
Oh, God. Yeah. And isn't it interesting that totally coincides with the time in history where finally, despite the fact that the technology has been available for 15 years, a lot of people are working from home. And as a result, we're rethinking our relationship to work, to structure, to authority even to roles and to definitions.
Yes. We think, yes, we're in a period of time where all of that can change to something new, except it's really hard sometimes to let go of what we knew before, to help us be comfortable with what this new thing might be.
So we can shoop our way to this new idea of identity and role.
Yes, definitely. Which is like on Monday with this group of women I'm working with at the minute, and they did say at the end, it's just about the stories we tell ourselves. And because I've been asked before, is letting go something that gets easier? And I think that in a way it does, but it's something you just have to keep. You have to put yourself in that position to, but so that it does become more comfortable. And I love how you phrased it, to shoot your way.
I mean, you've just reminded me, about this whole thing of, defining and professionalism. And I think that's something I feel as a speaker and a workshop facilitator, I feel under a lot of pressure to answer those kinds of questions with the expected sorts of answers. Kind of myself almost forgetting that actually the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is that I don't believe in those answers and I shouldn't actually be giving them.
Yeah, it's so hard. In fact, we've been booked to work with groups. Sometimes we're booked as artists, which neither Pip and I have ever defined ourselves as, interestingly. We've been booked as well-being facilitators.
Right.
We've been booked just as facilitators. We've been booked as emotional well-being facilitators.
Which HR block did you fit into this week?
Yeah, exactly. And then, I'm now doing a few more of these podcasts or talking events, and they want to be director or founder or CEO. All these words that are so weighty, and that sometimes, I can easily sit in, and other times, no. The fact that you said at the beginning, Catherine is a shooper. I mean, that was great.
Right. So somebody's watched this on YouTube, or they've listened to the podcast, and they bump into you in the street, and they're like, you're the Shooper. Yeah. And they say, I just can't let go. I'm really struggling with this. I'm not happy with my identity and how this is, manifesting in my actions in the world. Where do I start? And you're only allowed to give them one piece of advice. What would you say?
I'm only allowed to give them one piece of advice. That's a really tricky one.
Yeah, sorry.
I mean, it has to be about the other people that you're with. So if in my way, when you're with a group of it's not really something you can do on your own. If you've got some other people that you can push things a little with, it doesn't. If they're your best friends that you're with, then how do you go out and play with that? Like, I know that's a big way of saying things, but often when we're on holiday or when we're with our friends, that's when we do things we wouldn't necessarily expect. And actually, if I challenge you to do it without the alcohol as well, then with your friends, these are the people that you feel most comfortable with. You're more likely to do it with them. And then, I can offer sorts of games as starting points that you could do, but it is about the people that you're with. You've got to get with a group first.
I like that. So it's really, which again, I think is something that people don't often think about. Your community, your inner circle, and who are those people, and do they actually have your best interests in heart? Are they actually your mates, or just, I don't know, drinking buddies or whatever?
Yeah, exactly. And so if you've not got that, then I would say, I've got some you can come along to and try this out. And sometimes it's easier to do it with strangers, to be honest, and then you really do learn what backup is when you are going on a play run through the streets or whatever. I mean, that's just one of the things that we might do, but you do know what it means to have somebody really support you.
Yeah.
When you shoot. So, we can find people, but it's the people that make the difference, really.
Awesome. Catherine, it's been fantastic talking to you. about shooping and shoopers. Thank you very much for your input. It's been great.
Lovely to talk about it. Thanks for the conversation.
It's a pleasure. And if you've been listening to this and you're thinking, okay, I need to know more about this shoopery, you will find all of Catherine's links and social media and what have you in the show notes underneath this episode. Do not hesitate to get in touch. Maybe you'll be shooping down the streets of a town near you in the future. And until then, keep it real. Don't forget, rebel, reject, so that you can create. Until next time. Ciao.